I saw a girl who contracted a rare African parasite shoot crack, causing tiny worms to crawl out of the hole in her arm and from the corners of her eyes. It happened. I'm sure it did. I saw the worms. She held one up and said, "See? I told you. This is what they look like." I threw it on the floor and burned it with a lighter. I wasn't even on drugs because I had a drug test for probation in the morning. It's like my own brain is trying to convince me it didn't happen, but I'm sure of it. Posted this on Reddit already once. And people thought I was making it up. I joined the Mile High Club. It was on a flight from New York to London. I just wanted to join the Mile High Club for a thrill. Not because I had a fetish for ducking on airplanes or anything. It was quite uncomfortable and cramped really. We had a difficult time finding a position that worked. As I was coming we heard banging on the door. The flight attendant had somehow figured out and he began scolding us. Really giving us shit. We were panicking and trying to come up with a plan. Worrying that maybe we'd get into serious trouble once we landed. In the middle of all this the flight attendant came back with 2 glasses of champagne and winked at us. Once we realized he had been trolling us, our mood changed instantly from worried to amused as duck. I fell asleep listening to a CD one day and a little bit later woke up to it still playing and on at a part where they did a skit before a song. The skit was kind of funny but there was one part I couldn't hear, so I got out of bed to rewind it, and when it played back it was entirely in French. I don't speak French but could understand what they were saying clear as day a minute earlier. I don't know what happened. During a trip to Williamsburg I woke up in the middle of the night to an either Civil or Evolutionary War soldier, too dark and scared itless to tell, sitting on the foot of the bed. He got up and turned around and I swear it was a boy no older than 15-16 and had a ragged bullet hole wound just below his neck. I'll remember that on my deathbed. When I was 6 I was in a car with my aunt. While she was driving I opened door and fell out. Luckily she didn't drive fast. Probably she just started driving. I can't remember. So I wasn't hurt. I told that to my family several times already and they refused to believe. Few weeks ago, I was with my aunt and she told me that story and asked me do I remember that. I have some vivid memories from when I was a baby. Most people's earliest memories are from when they are toddlers. But I remember bits and pieces of being an infant and getting breastfed by my mom. I also recall listening to her singing songs to me while rocking me and sitting in my crib for hours listening to music playing. I don't remember everything day by day but there are quite a few memories from that time. My earliest memory that I can fully recall is hearing my mom and dad arguing in clear view of my crib. I don't remember what they were saying but I know they were shouting at each other and I was getting upset because of it. Since I was in a crib, I know I couldn't have been a year old yet. Not sure if this counts. But I have a handful of chronic illnesses that basically cause me to be in significant pain more often than not. Despite this I consider myself a very happy person and try my best not to let it get me down. But it certainly is difficult getting people to believe me, especially since I look fine. Whenever I describe my experience with these illnesses people tend to think I'm exaggerating. It's not so crazy. But I feel like every time I've tried to tell it people don't believe me. I was driving around a city pretty lost, before cell phones WGPS, and was stopped at the end of an alleyway waiting for an opportunity to turn when a cop pulled up to my right. He rolled down the window and motioned for me to roll down my window. I was of course super nervous, thinking that perhaps I drove erratically due to being lost or maybe I'm somewhere I shouldn't be. Once my window was down he does a "what's up" nod and asks, "Want a race?" I'm now even more confused. But he repeats the question. I tell him no and that I'm lost. He asks me where I need to go and I give him the name of the restaurant. He tells me to follow him and I get to follow him all across the city going through stop signs and lights. Stopping traffic every once in a while when he'd wave for me to pull over again and he'd park beside me and give me a heads up of what turns we'd be doing next. Led me all the way to the restaurant. It's actually a shared experience between me, 2 of my aunts and my sister. It happened when I was 11. My aunt was visiting our house, I lived with my mom, my other aunt and my 2 sisters. Both my aunts were talking and catching up and her son, my 6-month-old cousin, was getting fussy. I offered to take him and brought him back to my room to lay him on the bed and play with him. He was fine for a while but got fussy again, so I went to take him back to his mother. In the hallway closet on the way out to the living room and kitchen was our washer dryer. Someone had taken out clothes from the dryer and left the basket in front of it during the time I was in my room. I ended up tripping on the basket and my cousin fell out of my arms and into the air. This all happened in slow motion for me, but I remember catching myself, leaping forward and catching my cousin just before hitting the floor like he was a damn football. Suddenly it's really quiet. My youngest sister was staring from the living room couch and my aunts were staring, jaws dropped, at the kitchen table. He starts screaming and my aunt rushed over to pick him up and keeps thanking me and laughing hysterically out of nervousness, confusion and probably just the situation in general. We told this story to my cousin years later and he just doesn't believe us. We haven't shared it since, but my aunt made a joke about it when I was holding my own child and tripped a little over an area rug. You're clumsy, but I know you won't let that kid hit the floor. I once fired my rifle in a fight in Afghanistan while holding the arm of my colleague while my pants were around my ankles. I was doing this because I had to take a poop, and I was hanging my butt over an edge of a cliff, and my buddy was turned facing the other direction because I can't poop with people watching. Well, mid-push on a big log coming out my butt, we started taking fire and I was holding his trigger hand. I unslung my rifle, flipped the safety, and began shooting off to my right while still pooping. The biggest problem with all this was that it was a no wiper. After a few shots and me pinching off what was hanging, he let go and I pulled my pants up while he got into a fighting position. After the fight, I smelled like poop. I didn't wipe for 2 days until we got back to base. I did eventually wipe, but the damage to my underwear was already done. Those racing stripes never fully got washed out and I retired those underwear after that mission. None of our guys were hurt that day, but I did hold a ceremony for the lost whitey tighties by burning them. RIP in pieces. Edit, forgot a word. I once left my completely fine and working mobile phone in the kitchen and went to lay down for a little on my roommate's couch. He and I were alone at home and he is a very active gamer and was basically gaming throughout my nap. When I woke up I wanted to get my phone, but when I went and got it, it had the signal for SIM not connected on it. So I open up the phone to look at my SIM, just to find the metal part of the SIM card completely scratched and utterly destroyed. Of course I asked my roommate what he did to my phone, but he just said he was gaming the whole time and was just as astounded as I was. To this day we are completely flabbergasted and do not know what happened. But I am pretty positive that we have a poltergeist in our flat. One day in my freshman year of college I biked to Subway. Like halfway though my ride there my chains fell off. I was on campus and it was crowded, so I just walked my bike the rest of the way and figured I'd fix it later. I got my sandwich and came out to go eat it back at my dorm. My chain was completely fixed and was perfect. I was in there for less than 5 minutes. I don't know how it was fixed. My guess is some kind person noticed the chains were broken and just fixed them on the spot. I was thrilled but not without massive curiosity. This isn't very extreme. Just wanted to say it. I opened my bedroom door as a kid to see a creepy adult man with his back to me, hunched over, staring out the window. I said sorry, closed the door and ran to my parents. They checked the room and everything was normal. 10 years later I was checking out the cute neighbor girl in their yard and I heard a tiny sorry behind me and the door closed. Nothing there. I was home alone at the time. I just jerked off afterward, but I knew something weird had happened. 2 years ago I was visiting an old friend of mine who I hadn't seen in a while. And in a call prior to that she claimed she was possibly haunted. At the time she was struggling very much with depression and drug addiction. So I didn't put much thought into that. Fast forward, we are at her place cooking at the stove when a box of chocolate chips launches out of a cupboard. Not just falling down. It straight up got yeeted a few feet. We basically shrugged it off lol. Next day I was showering and the tap water turned